Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you today to the Planning and Development Committee on Wednesday the 19th of December. 9th of December. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to their elders and the elders from other communities who may be here today. We would also like to acknowledge all other people who have contributed to the rich diversity of this country. Are there any apologies?
No.
Thank you. I'd like confirmation of the previous minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Claridge. All those in favour? Thank you. I would like to remind everybody that we record and live stream our meetings. They are on our homepage on the YouTube link. Behaviour at meetings, please. I would actually like to recommend that everybody is good. Are there any public submissions? And I'd also like to ask everyone, if you have a conflict of interest, could you please state what that is and leave before that is brought up. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will have a conflict of interest item number 3, planning application in Gadoonia Drive. I will be leaving the meeting for that item. Thank you. It will come under the new 2020 Act, which will be a general. There's different classes. Mine will be a general one. So
general conflict.
General conflict of interest. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Item 1, any public submission?
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 2. So item 2, I have 4 speakers for this. Item 2 is the removal of nature strip trees at 10 Shawbrook Avenue. Our first person to speak is Greg O'Brien. If you'd like to come up to the lectern, please. While you're making your way up, Greg, I'd just like to say that we will give you 3 minutes to speak. There will be, are you doing your heart? So there will be a noise, a ding, 30-second warning when 2.5 minutes is up. And then if you need more time after the 3 minutes, I'll see if the councillors are happy to let you go on. Thank you if you'd like to.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be heard tonight's meeting. I would like to give a brief outline of the lead up prior to the submitting of the petition. Our first concern arose approximately 2 years ago when a number of trees were planted on the nature strip outside 10 Shawbrook Avenue. Already on this strip is a huge elm tree, one of 3 in the avenue that were planted many decades ago. I contacted the Benalla Rural City, and following a discussion, it was agreed I expressed my concerns informally with the owners. However, further trees continued to be planted, and eventually 13 new trees lined the area, which includes a bend in the road and the road reducing to a single lane. Neighbours were continually expressing their concerns to me, and in May this year, I made a contact with the rural city, asked for clarification on the number of trees permitted to be planted on the nature strip. Upon no initial response, I contacted them again and submitted a formal complaint regarding a number of positioning of the trees. On the 7th of July, Benalla Rural City staff member Shane Downey, Dean Steekstra, met with me, and the compliance officer, Shane Downey, clearly indicated to me a number of trees would need to be removed by the owners, or the council would remove the lot. In the coming months, no action was taken by either the owners or the council. Both Gabriel Downey and myself made further contact with Benalla Rural City, and we were informed firstly that the matter would be dealt with, and secondly that a number of trees would be removed. Once again, there was no action taken or communication, and therefore concerned Shawbrook Avenue residents agreed to lodge a petition on the 20th of October. After submitting the petition, we learned that the owners had objected to the council's decision to remove the number of trees. The petition is something the residents hope could be avoided. We strongly believe we had voiced our concerns for the safety of those who live or visited Shawbrook Avenue. We ask for your support in this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Greg. Is there anyone who would like to ask any questions of Greg? Councillors? Councillor Firth?
Yeah, Greg, thanks, Chris. With regards to the trees, what kind of trees are they and how old are they now?
Some would be probably 18 months, and there were continual plantings right up until probably this winter. We've taken a long time to get to the council to try and sort this out, and we haven't had much luck. Definitely there's been a survey being done, a safety survey at the cost of $3,000, and we were told twice that trees would be removed and nothing's happened.
Thanks, Greg. Oh, Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr O'Brien, I just have a question. Is it purely just for the safety? I've actually been over to the street and had a look, and it's a very, very narrow road anyway.
Yes.
There's not a lot of speeding, I would not imagine. I didn't see any. I saw one other car when I was there. I was there only for about 15 or 20 minutes, I have to admit. Is it the safety concern that everybody is wanting these trees out? They don't want any other trees removed in that street. It's a beautiful street, and I really feel that the feeling that you get when you're driving is, oh, isn't this lovely? It kind of, those trees to me add to the look of the neighbourhood, which makes it very pleasant. It looks like a very pleasant place to live.
Not pleasant.
It's only the safety concern. No other trees are in the way.
Safety concern, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
No, that's okay.
Our next speaker is Gabriel Downey. Welcome, Gabriel.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, committee members and visitors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the safety issue that is concerning a large number of residents at Shawbrook Avenue. Let me begin by saying the residents at Shawbrook Avenue are not anti-tree. In fact, we love the tree aspect of our neighbourhood, and we thank the council for their efforts in environmental projects, including preservation of our elms, both in our street and in Greater Benalla. But today I do speak about safety. Upon entering Shawbrook Avenue, the road has provision for two-way traffic up until the bend. The road narrows significantly at the bend to a single lane until you reach the turning circle at the end. When driving, cycling or walking either in or out, we rely on the cement bays or the nature strip to pass with ongoing traffic. Residents and visitors are always accommodating in passing each other as they are afforded vision of oncoming traffic, space on the side of the road. 10 Shawbrook Avenue has a high fence covered in creepers that wraps around the corner of the boundary of the property, which incidentally is not in keeping with the estate guidelines, but that's another matter. It has trees lined inside the fence to create an attractive outlook, privacy, shade, all natural design choices to beautify a home. Unfortunately, the property is situated right on the corner of where the road narrows significantly. The residents of 10 Shawbrook Avenue have planted 13 trees on the nature strip. That's council's land, as you know. Many of these trees are of a variety that may grow up to 12 metres tall. At present, these trees obscure vision, creating a dangerous blind spot when it comes to sighting oncoming traffic. It's not until you are right at the top of the bend that a driver gets clear sight. This lack of vision also means it's not until the last moment that a driver, cyclist or pedestrian has the opportunity to change course and veer either left or right to avoid oncoming traffic. It's not just the vision that impacts safety. The cluster of trees numbered 7 to 13 in the square footage of the vacant land, namely the nature strip, and therefore reduces the options. It's not just the vision that impacts safety. The cluster of trees numbered 7 to 13 reduce the square footage of vacant land, namely the nature strip, and therefore reduces the options for vehicles to safely veer to the side when allowing for oncoming traffic to pass. As the trees grow, not only will they impede all vision, the heavy cluster will damage roads, drainage and create an even greater hazard. Our street has residents who are hearing impaired and rely on a clear line of sight more heavily than others. This does not assist them in any way. The visual and physical obstruction has resulted in residents not being able to use one side of their circular drive due to lack of vision and relocating their post box due to difficulty of the postie gaining access. I do not ask that all the trees be removed. I do not include the elm that has been here. Our intention is not to be extreme. I do ask that trees numbered 5 to 13 be removed to create a clear sight line so that we were previously afforded when this estate was established.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Gunnar-Rutten.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask a question. Are you suggesting that when oncoming traffic comes in the street, do you have to drive on the nature strip to give space? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. The street has cement bays periodically spaced for you to drive up onto the bay if a car comes. Where there's not a bay, you drive up onto the nature strip. The gutters allow for that. They're of a nice inclination to allow cars to drive up and roll around. It's a common practice. But right on the bend, when you come where it's narrow, you're coming around, it's wide, you come into the narrow part, the trees are here. If someone's coming around the bend, that person will go this side and one will try to go that side. The fact that the trees are physically there and will grow means that makes the space on the narrow part of the road even smaller, so you can't get up on the bend. Now, at the moment, they are small, but they will grow into large trees. Some of them are varieties of ornamental pear. We know that they grow big. Not all grow big, I understand, but there are large trees there. And we don't wish them all to go either. We just the ones that obscure the vision.
Councillor Davis.
Through you, Madam Chair. Gabby, thanks for your presentation. It was very clear and precise. My question is, the cluster of trees, 7 to 12, 11,
13.
Yeah, that cluster there, how far actually, we're talking about trees that can go to 12 metres high. What will the width of those trees, how far are they off the road now?
Well, some of them are pears, so if you know what a pear tree, ornamental pear tree is like, depending on how much water, rain and nurture they will get, they can have trunks like this. When you come around from coming into the street, each one will block off a different vision. As you're moving, you can't see here, but you could see here, you can't see here, but you could see here. As you come around, because they continue in a double line, there's going to be no vision in the end, because every option that you can, the next tree will be the blocking. That tree will be fine, but it'll be the next tree, and then there is vision now, but it'll be the next tree.
So you're saying that area is really a screen plan?
It's, yes.
Yeah. And the other second question from me, Madam Chair, the other trees, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees in a line there, how bad are they?
1, 2, 3 and 4 are fine as far as, unless someone has a different reason to remove them. 1, 2, 3, 4 are fine in the safety aspect as far as I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6.
5 and 6. 5
and 6, because when you come around, they block you looking between the elm and the gap, as well as the other trees on the other side.
Thank you.
That's the avenue that you look through.
Thanks, that's clarified it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Gabby.
Thanks.
Our next speaker will be Susie Pearce, please. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit slow.
That's all right.
Thank you, councillors, for letting me speak. It's really interesting. Same story, same stream, different versions of the same issue. I'm here to speak against the petition that was presented. And the petition says that 7 trees to the south of Shawbrook Avenue and 3 to the west are to be removed. There are no trees outside Shawbrook Avenue to the south or the west. Therefore, the petition has no basis and is invalid. None of those who signed the petition could have read it very carefully. But irrespective of this, I reveal issues surrounding the petition. Shawbrook Avenue is a pretty cul-de-sac due to its individually designed and well-maintained privatised roadside reserves. It's 250 metres long with 16 houses and no footpath. The unusual road design is due to the mature elm trees. The street narrows at the bend, as Gabby has just said. One of those trees is outside our property. The road design, by road design, none could ever drive at the permissible 50 kilometres an hour. Pedestrians use the road because of the privatised landscapings. Nearly everybody who signed the petition has a privatised roadside reserve. And those landscapings have hedges to the curbs and many large trees. Today, the elm trees were all severely pruned, or certainly 2 of them, one outside our place. One resident of Shawbrook Avenue walks nearly every morning, another walks her dogs most days, 2 couples walk and cycle sometimes. None of the other residents ever walk or cycle except me. Some signed the petition, some were not asked, some refused. One wasn't sure why she signed, but knew the man who asked her. Few ever entertain and have extra car visitors. Council's Tree Asset and Management Plan acknowledges the privatised roadside reserves in their overview. Both of the management plans state in their executive summary that trees are an important and visible asset that improve livability in the city and provide enjoyment for residents. We planted our trees after I spoke to council, and I believed that I had permission, and that when I started planting, I was doing what other residents were doing, privatising my reserve. And the gentleman who spoke first even helped me plant them. He watered them and he provided manure for them. May I have an extension, please?
Oh, there's still 30 seconds if you'd like to just keep going.
I need more than that. Sometime after helping me plant, he realised that he could not reverse his caravan into his shed because of the trees, and he asked me to remove them. I've since replanted the trees that he asked me to remove even closer to the fence. After I replanted them, I refused to move the second lot of trees, and so he went to council and complained.
Righto. Susie, if you don't mind, I'll just ask if someone would like to. Councillor Davison seconded, Councillor King. You may continue, Susie.
Thank you. Our opposite neighbour complained to City Council, and the bylaws officer, Shane Downey, visited and told my husband and me, and my husband is here, so he will verify, that all trees were compliant and that the roadside reserve outside our house was not for use of our opposite neighbour. Using delegated powers, Council's Management Property Working Group wrote to me in August requiring that the trees, all but 2, be removed. Citing the basis of posed a risk to vehicles and pedestrians due to reduced ability to see oncoming traffic, but did not specify from which direction. We received legal advice and appealed and are still waiting some information. This petition is the second attempt to have the trees removed. The promoter of the petition wants this for his benefit. He is not affected by the asserted safety issue, and his caravan problems have not been resolved. This is a squeaky wheel issue presented in one guise to achieve another. Pedestrian visibility, tree by tree. Which one creates the risk to pedestrian and impedes visibility? We don't believe that any do. Pedestrians have plenty of room to walk on the reserve. It's a 5-metre reserve. All the trees that were planted are narrow in habit, and they emulate the trees that are inside our garden and are in many other properties in the neighbourhood. With regards to vehicle safety, we received written advice regarding our trees and road site considerations from a qualified road engineer who visited the site. The infrastructure design manual adopted by Benalla Council gives engineering guidelines for considering site distance in relation to general road design, roundabouts and intersections. It includes overtaking guidelines that are not applicable to urban streets and stopping site distance guidelines relating to speed in residential streets. The advice was summarised by saying that as a basic principle, visibility or sight distance is only a consideration at an intersection or roundabout, and the safety stopping distance is irrelevant for a mid-block location on a street remote from an intersection where there is no vertical curve. Tree removal. Council's revised tree asset management plan that was adopted in October 2019 has 7 bullet points regarding tree removal. One of those points could arguably be relevant, but it says, if a tree impedes access to a driveway or driveway safety, it should be removed as a last resort after all options have been exhausted. This could be applicable to one, but we've had no discussions. All Benalla driveways potentially have that problem. I could go on further, but I think I might run out of time about how appropriate this is to discuss this issue in relation to looking at 3 aspects of the council plan.
Excuse me, Susan.
Yeah.
I'd just like to ask for another extension.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis, Councillor King. This will be your final.
All right, thank you. Those who signed the petition asserting pedestrian and safety issues might be surprised after the council plan is reviewed what outcomes might affect their properties and their reserves. A footpath, if it were built in Shawbrook Avenue, could only be built on the north side based on connectivity. And I'm talking about connectivity to a new footpath in Samaria Road. It would ruin the aesthetic of all of Shawbrook Avenue and cause extensive pruning and removal of pedestrian impacting trees and hedges on their properties. The new Samaria Road path does not benefit anyone. As theme 2 of the council plan aspires, it does not start or finish at a curb, but with a steep bank, so elderly and disabled people cannot use it. Maybe it is intended that it continue into Shawbrook Avenue. Adjacent neighbours of that path were only advised that it would be constructed on the Friday before works commenced the following Monday, and there was no consultation. It was constructed following a letter from one cyclist. Council staff told the residents beside that footpath that council must act if they receive one letter. So now we all know that one letter, a small petition, or in some cases just a phone call, and council must act, including to require removal of our trees. This item identifies a range of issues and plans, but most specifically that the council plan needs urgent review to create a proper strategic plan instead of aspirational goals delivered by ad hoc request. You must reject the recommendation that the petition be received. As I've just pointed out earlier, the suggestion or the item says that the trees are in a place where they don't exist at all. Thank you for letting me speak, and I'm very happy to have been here, and I tabled my report. I have edited some of it, so I hope I didn't edit so much that you couldn't follow what I was saying. Thank you for letting me speak.
Has anyone got any questions for Susan? Councillor Claridge.
Yeah, thank you, Susie.
There you are.
The tree planting number 7 to 13, the cluster of trees.
Yeah.
What was your reasoning for planting a cluster in such a small area?
The reason for planting that is that there is a cluster of trees directly over the road from us, and I did it with aesthetics in mind. I am a tree lover, all of these trees will grow in an upright, narrow habit, and they should complement what is inside and outside our fence and what is in the street. The assertion that they grow to the size that has been mentioned here tonight, none of those trees will do that. Within the Pyrus range, there are Pyrus trees that have an umbrella shape. Different varieties grow to different widths and sizes. I did not for one moment think that the planting of those trees would be a problem, particularly as I had asked the residents in the street before I planted about planting trees, and they all said, oh yes, we love trees, go and plant trees. And I will refer to the state, every state government has a planting policy. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Through you, Madam Chair. Susie, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
And there was no way you're ever going to fit that into 3 minutes. Serious.
I didn't realise I only had.
Now my serious question is, you kept referring several times to the area outside your fence line as a reserve. Do you want to give me your definition of that area as a reserve?
Well, some people call it a roadside reserve. I referred to a reserve, meaning a roadside reserve. I thought that was the correct definition of it. What would you use? What would you call it?
Well, I've got a large area outside my place, and I just call it the footpath, the area around the footpath. I mean, it's
well, the area
a nature strip. It's not. I don't pay rates on it, and I'm only responsible within my fence line that I pay rates on, and my title describes the area that I own, and outside that area belongs to the council. I don't know whether I'd call it a reserve. I'd call it more a.
In council documents, it's referred to as the roadside reserve.
Okay,
and ours is 5 metres wide.
Anyway,
and it's in your council policies, tree asset management plans, it is recognised that the houses. In Shawbrook Avenue have privatised reserves.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gunnar-Rutten.
Thank you for the informative presentation, Susie.
Thank you.
In your speech, you mentioned that you do cycling and walking on that avenue. Is that right?
Well, I walk all over Badalla. I know the streets of Badalla very well. Yes.
Have you had?
And I've never seen anybody going up onto that those parking bays because it's a narrow street. It's very difficult to park. Some people might see that is used, but I have never been aware that that's what is used. I believe that they were put there for parking where people can't park in the street.
Have you had any safety concerns while you were walking on the street with oncoming traffic or cars?
Never.
Thank you very much, Susie. No more questions? Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Perry. If you'd like to come down, please, Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll give you 3 minutes.
Yep, fine.
Okay.
Madam Chair and councillors, thanks for having me speak to you tonight and hopefully correct a lot of the things that have been incorrectly stated by my predecessor. I live at 7 Shawbrook Avenue, directly opposite number 10. We built there, my wife and I built there 17 years ago, whereas the person in number 10's not long moved in. So she's very recent, so she wouldn't know much about the history of the place. My concern as an elderly person is for the other elderly people in our street getting around, wanting to walk around the area and not being able to because of the traffic problem. If the trees that have been planted were able to be moved back into the person's property off the council land, which is the nature strip, then people would be able to walk along that side of the road. The aprons that have been talked about were put in there quite a few years ago because of the traffic. And at that time, a lot of building was being done in the street, and the same thing is happening now. Trucks, cars, rubbish trucks just can't get through with other traffic coming through. My wife and I really love trees, but we feel that planting all of these trees on council property, in other words, a nature strip, is wrong. I've had a history with council. I'm a former councillor and mayor of the city of Waverley in Melbourne, now the city of Monash. We had regulations there regarding street trees where each occupant of a building was allowed one street tree in front of their premises. And of course they were looked after by the council as far as pruning. And of course the council named the type of tree that was allowed to be put in there, mainly for safety. Otherwise the tree could spread and there was a danger of somebody waiting for somebody, a person at night time, and grabbing them and causing harm. The trees that are there really aren't needed because in front of that property is an elm. So to me, that satisfies, or should satisfy, council's requirement of having one tree.
Brian,
Now, I don't know what...
Excuse me, Brian, sorry. We've just asked for an extension on your time. Your 3
Yes,
minutes
please.
is up. Councillor Claridge and Councillor Davis, seconded. Thank you. You can continue, Brian, now.
Thank you. I don't know what council bylaws or regulations are regarding to trees in front of your property. I would hope that each property is allowed one tree. As far as the footpath is concerned, in 2015, my wife approached the engineer by letter stating that we can't walk out of our street along the nature strip in wet weather. And the footpath was pushed back until she contacted the CEO, and he informed her a couple of months ago that it would be put in November, which it has. So the history of the footpath relates to my wife's perseverance in looking out for elderly people who can't walk on rain-saturated nature strips. At the moment, we have problems in getting out of our driveway in the car because we can't see completely around the elm tree that is there, but the new trees that have been planted will completely block our view of the roadway that is further down the track. This morning I was out doing some gardening, and we had an instance of the apron being used where two trucks came down. One had glass on it, the other one had equipment on it for a tradesman. And one of them had to get up on the apron and get off the road. So they're being used. As far as riding the bikes and walking, there are lots of people that do that. And my wife and I, before I was injured, we used to go out on our bikes all the time and walk all the time down to the park. So we know lots of people that walk their dogs through there. I would like to see the trees removed There is one especially on the other end in front of the letterbox, and the postman, I noticed the other day, has trouble in riding his motorbike in to put them up in the box. I haven't spoken to him, but I'm sure he's having difficulty. And when it grows up, if it's the same as the other trees on the other end, he's going to be in real trouble. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Are there any questions of Brian? No, sorry, councillors only. Any questions, councillors? Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
That's our last speaker. We'll move to item 2, petition to remove nature strip trees at 10 Shawbrook Avenue, Benalla. Robert Barber.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As detailed in the report, tonight's was an opportunity to hear from submitters in relation to the petition. From here, it is proposed that we bring the matter back to the first Planning and Development Committee of 2021, which is on the 3rd of Feb, taking into account what the submitters have told us tonight and taking into account the findings of a road safety audit, which is currently being undertaken, is nearly finalised. So, taking to both of those matters, the recommendations on page 8, and happy to take any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Robert Barber. Any questions, councillors? If there's no questions, the recommendation is that the submission be received and that the submission come back to the 3rd of February Planning and Development meeting. Councillor Firth, you move that. Councillor Claridge, second. Would you like to speak, Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll get that opportunity in February.
Would you like to speak, Councillor Claridge? Would anybody else like to speak? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to item 3. Councillor Davis.
As discussed previously, I will leave it in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors.
Okay, we'll move on now to item 3, planning application for a 20... Planning application for a 27 lot stage subdivision and removal of native vegetation at 19 Gdynia Drive, Benalla, and 20 Cowan Street, Benalla. We have 2 speakers tonight. I'd like to ask Alexandra Davison to come up and speak, please. Welcome, Alexandra. You understand the 3 minutes. If you need more, we'll...
Madam Chair, councillors, senior council staff, concerned Benalla ratepayers, members of the media, good evening. I'm Alexandra Davidson and I live at 16A McConnell Street, a house that's been there for 22 years. This property is going to be surrounded by 27 lots. Those of you that are familiar with Cowan Street and also McConnell Street know the large size of the properties there and the fact that people enjoy the amenity of having trees, of having quietness, and of living very close to the Broken River because they've specifically chosen that area. I refer you to pages 9 and pages 37, and in particular to the 2 appendices. And I'd like to read a statement. State planning now requires that flood risk must be considered when making land use decisions, and council has an obligation to take steps to prevent any risk to property and people arising from areas potentially subject to overland flows, such as my property located at 16A McConnell Street. And recently, in the last week, there have been 4 inundations. The proposed subdivision does not identify an SBO. There's no SBO map that identifies land liable to flooding from land flows, particularly in a 1 in 100 year storm event, as required under state government planning requirements. Additionally, once the construction phase commences, where there appears to be no regulation regarding stockpiling of construction materials and machinery used in this project, this land's soil moisture levels will be saturated. The site has 27 dwellings or lots with no green corridors to absorb runoff from dwellings, and each dwelling's surrounding concrete driveway. Most of the sites are small in size, and no doubt owners will want to maximise the dwelling area with little thought to the building envelope to land ratios, with much of the sites being given over to concrete. Only 2 of the 27 sites exceed 1,000 metres. There may be daily noise and emissions from, for example, 54 vehicles or more. What I would suggest is that the provision of 2 green corridors with appropriate plantings would alleviate soil saturation and noise, plus provide 2 green lungs for this area. I object to the subdivision of 27 lots and recommend that the number of lots be reduced in order to incorporate at least 2 public green spaces.
Excuse me, Alexander. If you'd like to continue, I would have to ask for an extension.
May I have an extension, please, councillors?
Councillor King, seconded. Councillor Gunner-Uppy.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
If you reduce the number of lots proposed by Tomkinson and incorporate at least 2 public green spaces, this will allow plantings of suitable trees and vegetation to offset noise and vehicle pollution. But more importantly, it will allow for inundation and runoff from a concrete warren. They would also be in keeping with the ambience of the area's Broken River location. Councillors, staff, members of the public, thank you for this opportunity for me to express my objection to the number of units proposed by Tomkinson in the proposal under item 3 of today's agenda.
Thank you, Alexander. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, councillors.
Our next speaker will be Peter Gore from Tomkinson Group. Peter, if you'd like to make your way down. Hello, Peter, and welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors and others. The developer's asked me to come down tonight, just briefly speak to his development for him. My discussion's probably more about addressing some of the issues raised in the objections per se, because I'm sure all councillors are aware of the benefits of extra land developed, and that too, Benalla is a broader issue. In talking about flood risk as one of the objections, as you're aware, there's no land subject to inundation overlay on that area, and as such, there's no specific flooding other than what comes straight out of the sky. With that, all new developments, whether they're here or anywhere in Victoria, must capture rainwater and store a sufficient amount so that at any one time, there's only the equivalent runoff of whatever's on that land at the moment. This development's no different. So there will be no additional water taken straight off the site. The water that comes down is stored A in house tanks and B also stored in detention ponds. You'll note in the report that council has before them that there's talk of the development being split in 2, one going to the nearby detention pond for storage of that excess water and the other one down to Cowan Street detention pond. I believe that this adequately addresses that issue around localised flooding. We design overland flow paths to make sure the water gets out and that houses aren't put underwater as well. In terms of green space, etc. You do have the detention ponds as some of the green space. You also have the pathway or cycleway, whatever we're going to call it, that runs down into Cowan Street from the development. That'll retain as much vegetation as we possibly can as well. There are additional plantings going back into the street as street trees in accordance with Council's desires expressed through the infrastructure design manual. Our construction issues and that around machinery, etc., and amenity during construction, it's managed no differently than anywhere else. We have construction management plans in place and we're answerable to WorkSafe, Council, the EPA and any other regulatory body that decides to stick its head in the door. We, as supervisors of that, are very aware of all the issues and we do address them as we go. We've got concerns being expressed to us around large vehicle access. The subdivision is basically designed to allow large vehicles in and out, and large vehicles primarily being CFA trucks or service trucks. Matter, of course, in design. One of the other issues was impact on existing services. That area has been designed to allow development of this land to a higher density than what it currently has. So there is no ongoing issue in terms of serviceability of the site. I'm happy to, well, basically the report answers a lot of the questions and expresses what we believe to be occurring as a result of the development. So leave it in your hands, councillors.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any questions of Peter? You do? Councillor Garner-Ratney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You addressed the traffic issues.
Yes.
The big trucks and the CFA is one aspect, but there are objections about the number of cars traveling the Gudenia Drive, which is a narrow street. What is your suggestion?
The only commentary I guess I can offer on that is yes, there is an increase in vehicles and it's similar number of vehicles more than likely that already exist within the street. My one rider I'd put as an engineer on that is that street has been designed as to go through a future development. So that should have been taken into account with the original design. There's concerns around speed and safety on that aspect, certainly agree. And there's a suggestion within the report that we install speed humps somewhere along the street to reduce that length and risk of that occurring. That's a no-brainer for us as developers and engineers. Our general guidelines around that is 150 metres of straight road before you put something in to either slow the traffic or turn the movements, etc. So we're happy to comply with that. That's not an issue for us. We're happy to meet that sort of requirement.
Is there any other questions? Peter, I just wanted to ask, it's just an out there question that I'd like to ask you. When designing this, and you may not be able to answer it, but when you designed this, did you actually think of adjoining any of the property that is free, like the subdivision next door, incorporating a road into it that may lead back out into Cowan Street?
You're referring to that small road down into Cowan Street?
No, not that actual small road, but to the, when you first come in off, lot 2, so somewhere near lot 2. You know, because there's a subdivision going in there. I was just wondering if there was any chance that they might have had room to put a road, and, you know, that way it'd be a flow-on effect, not just a block of land that's self.
I'm not aware of the history of the development of this layout. However, I would not have seen that as being raised given the layout that's been produced. Normally when we do those sort of developments, you get it raised by council very early in the piece as to where the connectivity must be for that development. And it wasn't actually raised as a requirement at this early stage.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. There are no more questions? Thanks, Peter. All right. That's the last speakers. I'd like to introduce Nelish Singh, Manager of Development, to bring us item 3, planning application for the 27 lot stage subdivision and removal of native vegetation at 19 Gudenia Drive, Benalla, and 20 Cowan Street, Benalla. Welcome, Nelish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through Madam Chair, I present to the Planning and Development Committee an application for a 27-lot subdivision in 2 stages, removal of native vegetation at 19 Virginia Drive and 20 Cowan Street, Benalla. The proposed lots will range from 574 square metres to 1,349 square metres. 1 vehicle access point is proposed through Virginia Drive within the northwest portion of the site. A pedestrian access is provided to the south of the site onto Cowan Street. Tree removal will be required as part of the subdivision. The land is zoned general residential zone, is impacted by a bushfire management overlay and is going to be developed in accordance with the plans provided. The proposal was referred to all the referral authorities and as well as Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning and for the tree removal, and they did not have any concerns. They amended the first round of plans, however, provided consent and conditions. They've also asked for a Section 173 agreement for the retention of some of the trees and also building envelopes on lots 1, 3, 4, and 13 and 15. The proposal was advertised and 8 objections were received. The objections are summarised on pages 17 to 19 and generally concerned regarding traffic. The traffic impact assessment report was carried out for the initial lot, but there is also an 11 lot subdivision adjoining this. We've asked further information and they updated that report and provided officers with that development's impact and this development on Godinia Drive, and they complied with the infrastructure design menu, which states on this particular road it could have up to 2,500 vehicles per day. Then this subdivision would have approximately 270 vehicles per day movements. There is a condition that a site management, construction management plan be provided, and it is in the condition. The proposal was assessed against the Benalla Planning Scheme, clause 56 for subdivision, and it complied with the provisions. The recommendation is on page 21, 37 for the committee's consideration. Happy for any questions.
And are there any questions? Councillor Claridge.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I have a couple of questions. One, in the recommendation 1, part B.
Councillor Claridge, can you just go off mic on that? Sorry.
In 1 part B, which talks about the sealed pavement back to Cowan Street, will that be commenced before stage 2 or during stage 2?
Through Madam Chair, that would be part of stage 2, because technically in stage 1, the only bit that will be commencing will be through Godinia Drive. That will be still private property as such until stage 2 is developed.
Really, my question is, when will it be done? Would it be done at the start of stage 2 or at the end of stage 2?
It will be done at the end of stage 2, so it will be prior to the issue of a statement of compliance. So that'll hold their titles basically till the point that construction is done.
And can I have a follow-up question, please?
Yes.
In a previous subdivision that we've done, there has been concerns with the existing landholders that back onto some of these blocks where they will have a fairly huge financial burden if they're responsible for half the fencing. At the moment, they've probably got a farm fence. Now they're going to have 6 or 8 new neighbours, and those 6 or 8 new neighbours will want them to share 50% of the cost of the fencing. Is that something that we can deal with now?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a separate regulation, so that's under the Fencing Act. It's not something that the council enforces or controls in terms of the Fencing Act.
Unfortunately, that will be a reality when it happens.
Yes, will be.
Have you finished, Councillor Claridge? Councillor Firth, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Nilish. Just with regards to drainage, well, first of all, footpaths, it shows on the plan, footpaths are on both sides of the roads?
Through Madam Chair, yes.
Okay, that's right. I just want to clear that up. But with drainage, Ms Davidson mentioned that she lives in McConnell Street and she's had inundation recently. Do we have any known inundation or drainage problems in McConnell Street?
Through you, Madam Chair, the matter raised before that there wasn't any connection to the western part of the allotment, Lot 2. Lot 2, as part of the Benalla Urban Growth Project, that is the overland flow path behind Lot 2. So Lot 1 all the way to Lot 4 and then the adjoining allotment. That land, which goes from Courier Close all the way to Cowan Street, is an overland flow path. The planning scheme doesn't pick that up as a flood issue from riverine flood, and neither does it pick it up from a land subject to inundation perspective. But when the Cowan Street or the Benalla Urban Growth Project was done, Cardinals picked it up as an overland flow path that collected water on Cowan Street. So there's a pit located at the start of the Royal Freemasons. There's a pit underground that will take overland flows, and this connection, part of, as the developer said, part of this will be connected to the Benalla Urban Growth Project.
Right, so that overland flow path, the water coming down there will go under the road and into the retention basin that's part of the urban growth.
As part of the urban growth property, and part of this will go onto the reserve, which is where Truan Estate is. That feeds into the Wallace Street pipeline and goes through the river at the end of Wallace Street.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the urban growth project area as a contribution, there's contributions that they have to make for the drainage for the lot, each lot.
Through you.
Could you tell me how much is in that, the kitty for that project there?
Madam Chair, I could take that on notice. I'm not sure how much is in the kitty itself. I can ask the finance department to provide that information.
Okay, I'd be happy to take that on
Is that
notice.
the reserve amount in the?
The reserve for the contributions for
It's in the
the,
order of $150,000
okay,
as of 30 June 2020, the annual report.
very good. The reason for that question, Madam Chair, was with regards to, I do tend to agree that we're having a lot of development in Benalla, and which is good. However, green open spaces and so forth, and the reserve size here doesn't seem to be of a size that we want to make a parkland there, because it's just going to be too small. The green, the walkway to Cowan Street, I was just wondering whether or not that money can be used to build a green area around that retention basin, or that area that we already own. Anyway, it might be for another night, but that's where I'm leading with that anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Gunnar-Ruppy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going through the report and general engineering, recommendation number 14 regarding the footpaths and the constructions of that. The walk and the cycling path which connects to the Cowan Street, and once it ends there is no connection actually. There's a gap between the footpath that ends at the Freemasons or the Aged Care Centre. So will there be a connection between that footpath and the one that ends at the Cowan Street? And is that a part of this engineering recommendation?
Through you, Madam Chair, that can't be attributed, from a planning perspective, that cannot be attributed to this development. Because that's of an existing, that's from an existing development. We've got, when the Royal Freemason was approved, that footpath was made all the way from Thomas Street to Cowan Street. The balance is provided by this lot to their place. In the future, when those lot owners subdivide, then we'll ask them to put the footpath. However, in the event the councils decide to put a connection to, then it'll be the council's capital works program that will deliver that.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Knowledge, this question you might need to take on notice, but I'll ask it. In relation to stage one, so the runoff stormwater drainage will head to Wallace Street, the basin there. Is that what might have been mentioned earlier?
Through you, Madam Chair, that will go to the Benalla urban growth boundary. The balance will, then stage two will drain into the proposed reserve or drainage reserve located near Alexander Gray Lane, which is to the north of this property.
And just a follow-up question for me. So in relation to future developments which are on the horizon, will they also be heading in that direction?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Cowan Street Benalla Urban Growth Project dealt with properties that are south of Cowan Street. So the Benalla Urban Growth Project, all those lots till up to halfway Ayers Lane is catered for in the current drainage network, which is where the existing basin is. Yes, the basin will need to be deepened as a second stage, but the design for that is catered in the Benalla Urban Growth Project. The balance of Wallace Street, we've asked reserves because there's a throttle point in each pipe. So we are working to what is provided there, and it'll be held there until such point that when the water clears, then this will start draining.
So just to get my head around it, so with this development and future developments, our current infrastructure for drainage can meet that requirement?
Yes, up till Hayes Lane, Grant Drive, Oliver's Road. Beyond that, so beyond the halfway point of Hayes Lane, there will need to be a separate drainage scheme.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Neelish, I just have one, and just looking at stage one and stage two, I find I understand doing stage one first, but when it's in an entrapped area, I can't see why you wouldn't do stage two, because once they fill stage one and start building houses, once they start putting earth moving equipment back down here to do the landscaping, pull the trees out and that in stage two, won't there be a lot of problems in such an area?
Is it from a construction perspective?
Yes. So once they've done stage one and actually start building houses, and then the developers move on to stage two, they're actually driving through stage one. I find that that's really concerning. So I was just wondering, how do you come up with the ideas of it's cost I'm gathering is why they do a block and then do the next block. But this is in an area that's developed. There's no other way out. It's not.
In the staging process, and I'm not sure whether I'll be clearly answering the question, but stage two will still be private land. So gaining access over private land is still trespassing technically over private land. Therefore, the connection will not be able to exist, or that connection to Cowan Street can't technically exist by way of a road construction. But it's...
No, it's all right. Thank you. Councillor Firth?
Yeah, just looking at the plan that shows the lots.
Councillor Firth, could you please pick up the microphone? Thank you.
So, at the back of lot 13, which is to the west of the walkway to Cowan Street, there's trees. I'm taking it these red circles are trees that are to be removed.
3 minutes, yes.
Okay. At the back of lot 13, there are some trees that have got circles around it, but I don't think it's actually on that property. Is that correct? I'm just... having difficulty working out that.
That has been through a separate planning permit for a two-lot subdivision.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
identified as done by the same.
So that's a
applicant.
different part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That title exists on its own.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so let's move on to. Recommendation. Starts on 21 and ends on 37. Is there a mover? Councillor Claridge, seconded Councillor Firth. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Claridge?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend the recommendation. I think that it's well, Benalla badly needs more housing, and it's in a very good spot. And from what I can see of it, I think it'll be a good development, and we have to think of it as a new community. And I can see that that does exist will exist as a new community for Benalla.
And Councillor Firth, would you like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to second that motion with regards to, we've said it many times at council that Benalla needs the development, but with regards to implications, places and spaces, there are definitely reasons to have infill developments, and this seems to be perfect for it. I've visited the site, I've known the site for many years. That is one that really, from a certain fire hazards and things like that, I think this will be a good development to fill that up, and even though nobody likes getting rid of trees and so forth, the offset planting, I'm sure we'll more than make up for it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Benalla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I agree, this is a good development and we need development. However, I would like to see more green spaces coming in and look after the new housing and people who are going to live there. The council probably will have to look at that in the future, that area. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor O'Brien.
Madam Chair, thank you. I would just like to agree with.
Councillor O'Brien, please speak into that.
Oh, sorry. I would just like to agree with the previous statement. I also agree that I think we do need development. We've got development of cars and people that are moving to Benalla. But I do think we need to be,
Bring it up closer to you.
I do think we need to be aware of including more green spaces in our future developments. Not just, sometimes it seems a little bit like tokenism to me.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's passed. Can we please ask Councillor Davis to come back in? Thank you, Neelish. Councillor Davis, I'd just like to inform you that that motion was passed. Did you hear that? Councillor Davis? That was passed.
Motion was.
Passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now we'll move on to item 4, the planning application to use and develop land for a dog breeding facility on 38 Bars Lane. And we have a few speakers for this. The first one was Andrew Ahold, and Andrew is an apology, but has written, I'm woken up most mornings due to the call of a peacock owned by the applicant in this. Is it? I have no idea what that is. Application?
Yeah, must be.
And that's all he had to say. So our next speaker will be Daniel Gritty. Grixty, sorry, Daniel. Thank you. Welcome, Daniel. I'm sure you've got an idea that we've got 3 minutes and you can ask for an extension.
No leash, briefly on it. I better kill the peacock. My wife and I, Lauren, are very grateful for the recommendation by Benella's planning staff to approve our animal business. We've had English pointers, which is a breed of dog, for over 13 years and have gained experience as a domestic animal business as recreational breeders over this time. Our pups have been used as detection dogs by government natural resource managers, by pest management companies, and are highly sought after by pet owners. We do know and value our neighbours, and we truly respect their objections, in particular regarding noise. We live at the end of a dead-end road, and our nearest neighbour is more than 300 metres away. However, we have spared no expense to address noise concerns and designed and modelled the infrastructure to massively exceed all EPA noise requirements for our land. We also reduced the number of dogs from the initial proposal of 12 to 10 in total, which is just double the already allowed amount of 5 dogs for a farm's own property. The infrastructure and operational conditions that are listed in our permit conditions represent some of the most comprehensive for this type of business land use ever in Victoria. Given the importance of community harmony, we welcome these stringent conditions as a peace of mind for our neighbours. There are only 2 unworkable conditions that I'd like to amend if our permit is granted. These amendments I have provided to the planning staff who could speak to them if required at this meeting. We propose that the wording of Dogs Victoria in recommendation 1A, 1B, 1CI and 20 be reworded to regulations and codes for domestic animal businesses set out by Agriculture Victoria. Why will I need this amendment? Dogs Victoria is a peak body for specific groups of dogs and dog breeders. While breeding our type of dogs meets all Agriculture Victoria's requirements, the dogs we own and intend to breed do not fit under the Dogs Victoria umbrella. I believe this is simply an oversight when this condition was put in. Recommendation, Amendment 2, may I please have an extension? Thank you.
Councillor Firth and Councillor Davis, continue please.
Amendment 2 refers to recommendation 1CI. Not more than 2 litters to a maximum of 12 puppies up to 16 weeks of age. And I believe they meant at any one time. Well, that's not written as such, but I think the idea is only 2 litters or 12 pups under 6 weeks at one time. We propose that this be changed to not more than 8 litters per year and a maximum of 4 pups over 12 weeks at any one time. Why amend this? Agriculture Victoria regulations do not restrict litter numbers at one time, and from an animal welfare, logistical and business viability standpoint, this condition would be unworkable. Each dog comes in season for breeding randomly and at any time, so litters are naturally spread over a year anyway. If females are not bred when they should be as part of the vet-approved breeding plan, then they will need to be bred after the ideal breeding period, and this may in turn extend their life as a breeding dog before they are retired to a pet home. Having multiple litters at one time, with pups leaving the property before 12 weeks of age, will not affect noise requirements because pups less than 12 weeks of age mostly sleep, and do not have the capability of excessively loud noise. Furthermore, the distance from neighbouring properties and extensive acoustic testing and dampening of the infrastructure make this condition unnecessary for meeting any EPA requirements. I have a copy of the amendments, I'm not sure how I tabled them, as well as a letter from my vet identifying the animal welfare issue of that second amendment. We appreciate the opportunity to speak and we welcome any questions in your decision.
Thank you. So are there any questions of Daniel? Councillor Claridge.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Can you explain to me why the dogs don't fit under the Agriculture Victoria requirements?
They don't fit under Dogs Victoria. They fit under the agriculture. So the domestic animal business is governed by Agriculture Victoria and the dogs do fit under that. But there was a clause, a couple of recommendation conditions to comply with Dogs Victoria, which is a peak body representing a segment of dogs, in particular purebred pedigree dogs. It doesn't really account for the working dogs that I breed. But in terms of the requirement of a domestic animal business, by the very strict standard Agriculture Victoria, we meet all criteria with our dogs.
I have a follow-up question.
You can.
Just another question. You were saying that there's a chance of the breeding life of the dog will be extended before retirement.
Yeah.
If this isn't changed, isn't the breeding life of the dog your decision and no one else's?
100%. But we're talking about $100,000 bill to satisfy a 50% reduction of the noise at the boundary, so massively complying. Clearly, this is also about having an income. If we choose to only breed a dog once or twice, it would be totally unviable. This is at the end of the day, despite our love of dogs and a passion, it does need to be viable, especially when the amount of money each year just to maintain the facility, the expectations, the animal welfare. If you don't breed enough, there would be an inability to maintain the basic facility, let alone make it viable.
Can I just follow up on that, please? How many times would you expect to breed from an active female?
Yep. So the guidelines state, and I guess we have to consider this based on the vet recommendations for each dog. I would suggest 3 to 4 times. The limit that is recommended before needing further vet approval is 5. I don't feel we need to do that. But the guidelines in the domestic animal business are that you can breed a female up to 5 times without needing any further recommendations from the vet.
Thank you. And just one more, sorry. So if the animal is healthy, you would be breeding them 5 times?
It's not my expectation to do that. My expectation is to probably breed 3 to 4 and try and turn the dogs over to a pet home by 6. 6 is in the vet letter report, she states that the ideal breeding window is 2 to 6 for the age of a dog. And ideally you want to try and have their 3 or 4 litters in that time. RSPCA's best practice is to breed a female 1 litter on, 1 litter off from the age of 2 up until 6 and retire them. So that's conservative best practice. The domestic animal business allows for 1 extra breeding on that. And then they still allow for more if you want to do that. We don't feel we need to do that, no.
Thank you, Daniel.
Are there any other questions? Daniel, I have one. So with the recommendation, so you're saying 1 on, 1 off for the breeding season?
So everything in the domestic animal business regarding breeding and health must be written and approved by the vet. So I will be taking the vet's advice and the vet's advice in line with domestic animal business recommendations, standard code of practice, as well as RSPCA and Dogs Victoria, is one on, one off at this time.
I was under the belief that Dogs Victoria was 18 months.
Maybe I'm wrong with Dogs Victoria, but certainly in the domestic animal business, one on, one off is standard practice. It's up to the vet. So it's not detailed exactly, you must do this or must do that. It's vet approved and it's standard practice for vets from the several domestic animal businesses I've spoken to do one on, one off. There is a change, I think it's maybe the New South Wales version of RSPCA has recently, and I learned this from a lady, Karen, who has another domestic animal business in Lurg, and she mentioned the fact that RSPCA is now starting to revise their conditions to try and get domestic animal businesses to breed 2 cycles on, 1 off, 2 cycles on, and retire the dogs even younger so that they have less life in breeding as well as a better chance of rehoming. I mean, all of these things are for businesses that are really trying to push the envelope with breeding, I guess. My wife and I aren't that desperate to push the envelope financially. We really want to do this as a at-home business for the both of us, and we don't need to maximise every cent and every breeding, but there's guidelines we have to comply with regardless.
Thank you. Follow-up question. On the recommendation that 2 that you're asking to change.
Yes.
I must admit, when I read this in the paperwork, I was unsure of what they meant.
Yeah.
By the 2 litters to a maximum of 12 puppies. That had been explained that, in other words, you are to only have 2 litters, so from 2 different bitches at one time on the property. I do wonder about all of the change there. So could you please just explain it to me again, your version of it?
Why it would need to be amended? Quite simply to try and breed a female with rules around when to and how to, not factoring in their basic biology, would mean that, so let's say I have at full capacity 8 breeding females, let's say 2 come in season and get mated. I then need to wait 63 days to find out whether those 2 matings were successful with pups, of which just 1 single litter could be 12 pups if it was an extremely large one, which would violate the code. So 63 days straight away to find out whether you could do a repeat mating, then another 60 days before those pups left the site. So there's a 4-month window in between being able to mate dogs once you've mated 2. What do I do with the rest of the 8 dogs if they came, or the rest of the 6 dogs if they came on season during that time? I would have to pass that up against vet approved instruction, which would mean if that randomly happened every year in that order, I might end up holding on to some females that are never able to breed because there's already litters in the system. And I mean, in theory, some of them might need to stay there or be turned over before they've even been used, which is a total waste and against the idea of having a domestic animal business.
Just a quick follow-up. The 60 odd days that you're talking about,
Yep.
Wouldn't you be ultrasounding them at 21 days?
Yeah, your ultrasound's not effective really, other than to determine that there is a litter. We're talking about pups on the ground, right, at the end. So an X-ray is usually performed 1 to 2 weeks before to confirm the number. Even if ultrasound confirmed pregnancy, yes, it can. But it doesn't mean that the pregnancy is going to go full term, doesn't mean you're going to get the pups. So you wouldn't be able to do anything until...
They're on the ground.
Yeah, well, I couldn't. So all it does, it just puts a stop lock on any more females that got in season. And remember, they might only come on 6 to 12 months. So some females only ovulate once in a year. If I miss that window, that's 12 months they're sitting around when they should be bred and then moved on to their pet home.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Daniel, I'm just wondering, when you need to rehouse the pups after they've finished their production time,
Yep.
Is that particular breed of dog easy to rehome, or
Yes.
will you end up with quite a lot of extra dogs
Yeah.
at your place that?
So it's an extremely important part of the vet approved plan. So I currently have a waiting list of 91 dogs. And because I train them for detection work, and I will still train these dogs in the basic detection work, despite them being, it's part of their routine and exercise, they will be extremely desirable. You know, I haven't got to the vet approved plan yet, but you're probably talking about 3 dogs maybe per year or something rolling through. This is only a 10-year permit as well. That's all I requested because in 15 years or 20 years' time, our area is for rezoning for future residential. So I only requested a 10 years. So I might only cycle through 15 dogs or 20 dogs the whole time if I get to capacity of 8. So I do also understand that there's a fair climate of things going on in Benalla, and you know, all I can say to that as well, because we're all humans and we read and hear, is that this is extremely different. The infrastructure build is, as far as I know, probably the standard of all buildings in Victoria, both for quality of living and also acoustic dampening. So there's been no expense spared to comply with all animal welfare and neighbour considerations.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I just have a follow-up. You're training the dogs.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you will need to have more dogs? Like, so you've got your breeding, so you've got your 2 dogs and your 8 bitches. But if you're training, would that mean you would have to have an allowance to have other dogs still on the property?
No, this permit allows for a total number of dogs of 10.
Yep.
If I choose to use one of them not for breeding, or 2 of them, or 3 of them, like I said, this is the strictest as far as I know. Usually you're allowed 10 breeding females. There's no cap on the number of males so much. Plus you're usually allowed on farm zone up to 5 domestic dogs. So this is a massively restricted number of dogs that I'll have to not only accept that in terms of financial outcome, but accept it that I would probably still want a pet dog.
Yes.
Or 2, which I will have to take out of my numbers. But as I said, the making the money part is okay with probably 5 dogs, but it wouldn't be viable to build all this on that premise.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ray Stickland.
Yes.
Welcome, Ray. So you've got 3 minutes, and just at 2.5 you'll hear a bit of a knock, and you've got half a minute to go, and hopefully you're through. If not, we'll give you a bit more maybe.
Yeah, well, this was my first time, so I've got no idea what's going on. But anyway, as you know, I come from Benalla, and my family's all come from Benalla, and we've lived here for many years. Our complaint is from the dust from the road. We are on town water, we're on tank water, not on town water, and the excessive traffic is going to contaminate our water more. I've brought up 4 children in where I live now in Bars Lane, and now I've got grandkids coming along too, and the road has always been very quiet and everything, but the more traffic that comes along is going to really affect us. Plus, we all know dogs bark. You can't say they don't bark, because they do. The noise, it's just a lot of things. We can hear trains from our place, from the train line, so noise carries. But the more concern is the dust, the traffic. Yeah. that sort of stuff.
Thanks, Ray. Has anyone got any questions for Ray? Thanks very much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Dennis Mayne. If you'd like to make your way up, Dennis. Good evening, Dennis.
Good evening. My concern is much similar to Ray's. It's the traffic is, it's a little road, narrow. Daniel's not actually on the road. He probably goes in, at the end of the road. So he doesn't understand the dust is horrific. And we have trouble now keeping our spoutings clean for drinking water. I just think, apart from his breeding thing, I think the road is not good enough for that sort of traffic to be coming in and out of. That's our gripe,
Thanks very much, Dennis. Has anyone got any questions for Dennis? Yes, Councillor Perth.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, just with regards to that, the proposal states that approximately 64 dogs will be picked up over the year. It's still not a lot of car movements, I would imagine. It is zoned farm, so therefore you could have an awful lot of other things that actually have big trucks and things like that. So I'm just not quite sure that
when you've got a no-through road, the traffic that goes past our place, which we are Daniel's neighbour, nearest neighbour, obviously that's where the traffic's going, up to Daniel's place. Can't go anywhere else. And since we've been there, we've noticed a difference in the traffic just from Daniel doing training of dogs and taking people out on hunting trips. And the weekend there's traffic just boom, boom, past the place all the time. And no one stops, no one slows down. They just tear in, tear out, nothing to stop them, dust is everywhere, can't open the front door. I mean, it's just, the road is so narrow, you can't go past each other, so drop beside, so there's no way of getting off. And it's a dirt road, not a gravel road. Dirt.
Okay, no worries, thank you. Do you think, just to follow up, Madam Chair, with regards to the speed limit, do you think a change in speed limit might help?
Well, it'd have to be pretty slow, yeah, because the neighbours drive in and out slow. We just go 10 kilometres an hour so that we don't create dust for our neighbour. I just don't know how Daniel can control people coming in. It's all right, Daniel and his wife will drive slow, but all the people coming in and going out, they don't. They come in with boats, they come in with truck cars, with trailers on, with dogs or whatever. It's just dust everywhere. I don't think the road is right for a business like that.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Just moving on from the traffic, you're the house on the map that's 300 metres away, is that correct?
That's right.
Obviously, Daniel's probably got some animals, dogs there now, and he's got dogs coming on for training. Can you hear any animals there at the moment?
Christmas time, non-stop 24, and Daniel will tell you that. Daniel went away and had somebody looking after him. The dogs bark 24 hours a day, and we could hear them straight through our bedroom window. So, there's nothing to stop it. The sound travels. There's nothing in between us.
Yeah.
And you can hear the rooster crow. I mean, I'm not complaining about the rooster crowing, but you can hear it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Well done, thank you.
Thanks very much, Dennis.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, planning application number PW83/20 to use and develop land for a dog breeding facility, 38 Pass Lane, Benalla. Neelish Singh, Manager of Development. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through Madam Chair, present to the Planning and Development Committee a planning application to use the land for dog breeding facility for up to 10 dogs at 38 Bars Lane, Penella. The proposal includes keeping of at least 8 female dogs and 2 male dogs on site at any one time. It is expected that the pups from the litters will be sold and leave the property at 10 weeks of age. The breeding facility will include bedding area, whelping pen and exercise yards, as well as food storage and veterinary check room. The facilities will be located within the southwest corner of the property. By way of background, the first application was submitted detailing that there would be 12 dogs on the property. The application was advertised and 5 objections were received. The applicant has since revised that from 12 to 10, and that was advertised as well. The objections were not withdrawn. The main issues raised by the objections raised to noise emissions from the dogs barking and traffic along Bars Lane, creating dust to the properties. The dog area will be fully enclosed and insulated with Besser brick walls, and there is an acoustic report provided with the application. There is also a further condition that says within 1 month of the commencement of the use, if the permit is granted, that another acoustic report needs to be carried out. And any further work from that has to be incorporated into the development or in the use. The expected traffic generated through the proposal is not going to be substantially excessive, and that there will be also traffic generated from vets as well as supplies as well. The road hierarchy has listed that as an access road, and the road management plan has a annual grading plan on that road. The proposal is consistent with the farming zone. The objector would not require a planning permit to have 5 dogs, 5 domestic breeding dogs on the property, which is 1 male and 4 females, with a permit. So it can be done without a planning permit. What we are considering is the increase of the 5 and the impact of that on the farming zone. The proposal is consistent, as mentioned, with the farming zone, and the recommendations are from page 48 to 53.
Are there any questions of Neelish? Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Neelish, thank you for the report. Just in regards to the acoustics report that's going to happen again in 1 month's time, is there scope to do that in 12 months' time as well, given that by then there may be a couple of litters of pups have come along and things are in motion a bit more?
Through the Chair, the condition could be amended to read that acoustic report be done within 1 month, and a further subsequent one in 12 months, or as the council chooses.
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in relation to the amendments that were tabled tonight by the applicant, do you see concerns with those amendments being altered in relation to what we're looking at tonight provided by council?
For the first one, to change the Dogs Victoria, don't have an issue. There's more onerous things in the minister's guidelines than Dogs Victoria, so there's no issues there. In relation to the 64, it was a balance between the amenity, trying to balance the amenity dust impacts of the objectors and the applicant itself. The applicant did apply for 64 dogs, but it was a balance where the responsible authority does have the ability to control the number of dogs on the premises. We've also researched our decision through the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal case, where there was a proposal for 11 dogs, not similar breed, but there was 11 dogs, 9 females and 2 males. And this was the standard condition that was written in that permit itself that was reviewed by the tribunal in a case in Macedon Ranges.
Are you right there, councillor King? Councillor Davis?
Nalish, I know we're treating this one by itself tonight, but have you ever received any noise complaints from other breeding facilities that we've passed in council in the last term, in the last time since you've been in council, been employed?
Through Madam Chair, yes, we have received those.
My second question is, if this is passed, on what grounds and how often can we support or follow through objections from neighbours on barking dogs as far as sound goes? What's going to be the procedure?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's EPA guidelines on noise from Country Victoria, so they have to comply with that. There will be, as mentioned, there has been an acoustic report done. There'll be further acoustic report done after the use commences. The annual inspection required under the domestic animal breeding facility, it's an annual inspection. The council may choose any further increments of inspections if it wishes staff to carry out those inspections. Noise complaints need to meet the definition of nuisance under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, and the definition of nuisance is somewhat very difficult to make in terms of taking it to court.
May I follow? Just a follow-up question, Nosh. From a previous experience, it appears that noise happens when the place is vacant. When I say vacant, when no one's on site. So the people that actually own the facility, if they're off site, they can't hear the dogs. And how can that be policed? Because they come home, the dog noise stops. And I know from personal experience, because it's happened to me too, that when you leave your premises, your dog can start barking, you know nothing about it. When you return, it's wagging its tail and stop barking. So what policy can we put in there if they vacate the premises for the day and there's no one there and the dogs are all barking?
Through Madam Chair, there's a condition number 7 that says there must be a person over 18 years on the premises.
Is there any other question?
Thanks, Alicia.
I've actually got a question. I was just wondering, in the amendment that Daniel's asked for, Amendment 2 with the maximum of 12 puppies, I find that very, very hard, because what are we expecting him to do if a bitch has more than 6 and the one's already got 6? So if one has 7, what's he meant to do? Knock one on the head? I don't think we should be so stipulant on the number of puppies. Puppies are puppies, however many come in a litter, that's what they are.
Through you, Madam Chair, that this is based on an average of 6 per.
So it doesn't matter if.
Yeah, this is just an average in terms of the dogs.
Okay.
No, Madam Chair, I'm happy to move.
Oh, just a moment. Councillor Gunnar-Ratney.
Through the chair, thank you. There were 2 speakers about talked about the contamination of water, and what recommendations do address that in this proposal?
Through you, Madam Chair, the land is located in a farming zone. Typically, in a farming zone, there is more machinery on a gravel road. The expectation of an amenity in a farming zone is far less than the expectation of an amenity in a residential zone. So baling, etc., occurs after hours, at night, etc. So the dust produced by that would be different to what it will be produced by, or that will be minimal in comparison to a when you compare this farming enterprise to another farming enterprise, the other farming enterprise produces more than this farming enterprise because of the zoning itself. In that way, the Planning Act cannot override the road speed. We've put in their advisory speed limits, so we can only put advisory in the opinion of the council if it decides to put a restriction or putting in. The advisory sign is the yellow sign. The speed limit sign, which is red and black, is a enforceable sign. So if the council decides to reduce the speed on the whole road, that is a separate process through the Road Management Act. Goes through that process. So we cannot put a condition that is in contravention to the other act. So if the council decides that there is a further subsequent thing, it can put it through the safety committee into it.
Thanks.
And how would we go about doing that?
Through Madam Chair, put a part.
An extra part, another change to the recommendation.
Part B to the recommendation stating the speed limit be
reduced. Thank you.
Provided to the Road Safety Committee for assessment.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've all read the recommendation. Is there a mover? Councillor Claridge. Councillor Davis, I don't mind.
Look, I think we're in no man's land tonight because we have a recommendation in front of us. And we've had some paper put on our desk today that it's not attached to the recommendation. And I believe that in due governance, we should put this latest on the table tonight so that we get further clarification of what the proponent wants so that we can include it or exclude it in the recommendation. But tonight, as far as I'm concerned, and what Alicia's put to us is a recommendation that we've received and worked on it. This amendment really hasn't had time to be discussed. So I'm asking to...
Are you asking to defer this?
I'm asking this to be deferred. That was my roundabout way of saying it. Can we defer it, please?
Are you moving it to be?
I will be moving it as mover. Thank you.
I second it.
And you will second it? And would you like to speak on that?
I think I've gone around enough.
Would you like to speak on it?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think, yes, I agree with what Councillor Davis said. There are amendments required, and I think it's fair to give enough time for our staff to look at it. And also the concerns about water contamination and look at the road safety part of it as well in the next proposal. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on that? Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to support the recommendation to defer this. I think that I proposed to Nalish my first question just in regards to those two amendments, and I know he's answered them the best he can, but I think that needs a little bit more exploring, and also just some additional communications that we've had tonight around this recommendation, what's been brought to our attention by members of the community. I think too we need to discuss that in a little bit more detail as well. So I'm happy to support that recommendation to lay it on the table.
Okay, so the recommendation is to be deferred until the 3rd of February, the next planning and development meeting. So all those in favour? And that's passed. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 5, building and planning approval, September and October 2020. Neelish, again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, I present to the Planning and Development Committee the Building and Planning Report for September and October 2020. There were 23 applications decided in September under delegation and 21 in October. There were 4 amendments decided in September and 6 in October. There were 3 Vic Smart permits issued in September and 3 in October, and officer delegation as well. 1 application was decided by council for a 138 lot subdivision, and a notice of decision was issued in September, and a notice of decision also issued for the subdivision which had objections. There are still 2 matters before the tribunal for its consideration, and there will be a hearing for the Cowan Street one on the 23rd of February. For building approvals in September, there was a total of 37 building approvals carried out of which council's building department issued 23 building permits, and in October there were 32 building permits issued in the municipality, out of which council's building department issued 20. The overall construction cost is over $12.7 million, which is, in relation to the other months, if you have a look, is substantially good for development in Benalla. The recommendation is on page 68.
Are there any questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Nalish. I love graphs. 61, page 61. It looks like you're nearly off the graph. It's a bit concerning on page 62 with the outstanding applications. Is that, are they having, a lot of those having to go on to referral agencies, or is it just the fact that you're inundated with applications?
So, Madam Chair, there's a lot of applications. To date, we have received over 200 applications. In the last history of Benalla City Council, we have never encountered 200 planning applications since the commencement of Benalla City in 2002. So this is the first year, and the year hasn't ended. We've still got on hand another 4 to process. We've already crossed 200. It's just overwhelmed with development.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Claridge, Councillor Gunn-Ratney second. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Claridge? Would you like to speak to that? No? Councillor Firth, would you like to speak to that?
I would.
But they're holding the microphones.
Look, I just can't let it pass. We've seen higher amounts of money come through with planning, but usually there's a large industrial or commercial building that's part of it. This one here is $14.7 million spent in Benalla, or $12.7 million, sorry, in 2 months is quite spectacular. And yes, even though that you're not getting the permits out as quick as you'd like, but like you say, you've been inundated with over 200 permits, so it's quite worth noting the actual the amount of money that's being developed and invested in Benalla. Thank you.
Nobody else comment? All those in favour? And that's passed. Thanks very much. We'll move on to item 6. Development Activity Report for the quarter ending 30th of September 2020. Welcome. Neelish, again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I present to the Planning and Development Committee the Development Department Quarterly Report for the period ending 30th September. We've got 3 amendments with the Minister for approval. We haven't heard anything yet, so we're waiting that one. There were 80 applications received in a quarter in planning, and our processing times has dropped from 95% to 83%. We're still above the state average for rural shires, so that's a positive news that we're still trying our best to process these applications. There were From a council building permit perspective, we issued 57 building permits, which equates to 241 building inspections by our building unit. That doesn't take into consideration private building surveyors issuing, which is 32 permits in the quarter, and they're doing the inspections. So the growth rate is substantially high. In the emergency management area, we've going through the discussing with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning and Emergency Management Victoria, getting into line with the new changes to the Emergency Management Act. And we processed 5 fee waivers totaling approximately $3,107. The recommendation is on page 73. Happy for any questions.
Are there any questions? Question there. Could I please have a mover? Councillor King, seconded Councillor Claridge. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor King? Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Claridge? Would anyone like to speak to that? Thank you. All in favour? That's passed. We'll move over to item 7, Environment Activity Report for the quarter ending 30th of September. It's you. You don't look like Larissa at all.
I thought Nelly should like to do it this evening.
Well, I thought he was doing so well. I thought he was going to stay there for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will take the report as printed. I am actually Larissa this evening. We're happy to field any questions, and if I can't answer them, happy to take them on notice.
Was there any questions? If there's no questions, can I have someone move that, please? Hello. Councillor King's moved it. Councillor Davis has seconded it. All those in favour? Notice I didn't give you time to speak. Now we'll go to item 8 for facilities. Activity report for the quarter ending the 30th of September. Lovely to see a new face, Greg. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Highlights of the quarter for the facilities department include cleaning changes to include infection. I'll start that again. To include disinfection of frequently touched surfaces in response to the COVID pandemic. So a bit of a change for our cleaners there. Unfortunately, we continue to address graffiti on public assets, and we've removed some from the ceramic mural and the Senior Citizens Community Centre. That's a frustrating ongoing task for my department. We also started work in the IT area on a major server upgrade project. I'm pleased to report that we're on track for staff to be working from those servers by Christmas. And the key highlight of the quarter is, for me, information technology is coming to my portfolio. And thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome any questions.
Are there any questions? Get off live tonight. Oh, yes.
Chair.
Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Greg, is the mural the most affected with graffiti? And if it is that because it's not well lit or something like that, or is it sort of, do the graffiti artists share their artwork amongst everything? Assets?
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, that's a really good question. I'm just racking my brain as you're asking it, just thinking what's the most frequently attended facility for graffiti removal. I would say it is something we regularly expect every couple of weeks. The graffiti attacks on the mural are more texture type based attacks, so not big spray paints and those sorts of things. So it's regular, but it's minor. The most impacted facility is the public toilets under the library, unfortunately.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, can you just give us a bit of brief rundown on this ICT portfolio and how many staff are employed and what it actually does?
Yeah, certainly. So it's actually changing. At the moment, we've got a senior ICT officer and we outsource our help desk support to a company. And we've decided that a better service delivery method is to actually in-house our ICT support. So it'll be the senior ICT officer and 2 more junior officers working with that ICT officer to provide help desk support. It's a relatively cost neutral exercise. Instead of paying a consultant, we're paying local staff. And we provide everything from support for people who have issues with their programs to purchasing and training on new equipment such as phones or iPads or whatever device they need for their job.
Thanks, Greg, and I'm going to bring my iPad in to see you. And they definitely need some training. No problem. Thank you.
I waited for that. Is there any other questions? Can I please have someone move that? Councillor Claridge, seconded Councillor Third. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Claridge?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Item 9, Operations Department Activity Report for the quarter ending the 30th of September 2020. Welcome, Don Spokes. Been so patient, that Don. Oh, and for our last time.
Thank you,
Oh,
Madam
that's very
Chair.
sad.
It probably is a little sad. I think you're right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I present to the Planning and Development Committee the Operations Department Activity Report for the quarter ended 30th September 2020. Things that we've been doing in the Operations Department, we've resealed footpaths in Riverview Road, Gamalby Street and D Street, commenced and completed our annual spraying contract for all of the rural roads, urban drains. We started our annual pit cleaning program after our drainage audits had been finalised. We had 3 employees completed chemical training course so we can start to do some of our own drain spraying again instead of using contractors. We've done a lot of gravel road maintenance and patching of potholes. Through the winter time, it's predominantly what we do on the gravel roads. Our night audits on all of our roads were completed. We're busy with some wombat holes, fixing those up, and some continued repairs to Kilfarrer Road overpass, where we have some drainage issues over the top of the overpass. Parks and Gardens guys have been pretty busy. Completed the following some contracts with some contract supervision: the elm leaf beetle treatment, the township tree audit survey of 5,200 trees, power line clearances. We're continuing to work on the grant for growing Victoria Botanical Gardens. Completion of the track resheeting and drainage works and steel edging and 1 garden bed in the gardens. Dean worked hard on the splash park design to get that up and going. They've commenced the Aboriginal Gardens Phase 2 boardwalk. The fertilising and mulching programs and the pest and management programs and the rose and plant replacement program in the gardens. For our asset management, for the quarter, we've done away with the old asset assist system now. We've got the new reflex system up and running fine, so the numbers will look a little bit different to what they used to because we've swapped over to the new system. So basically, we don't have any sort of defects overdue on roads and drains at the moment. Safety defects they are, so that's good. We've rectified 118 defects on roads and maintenance defects on roads and footpaths. Outstanding ones, we've got 61 to do. We've graded 168 kilometres of gravel road. Customer requests completed for the quarter were 421. Customer requests outstanding, we have 23. Completed 32 after hours call-outs. And the interesting one was $767 before you dig applications for the quarter. Some of the, probably the highlight was the final testing and the implementation of the Asset Edge and the Reflex Asset Management System, which means that our guys have now got their own tablets and they're out there. We do all of our inspections, and it makes the whole idea of listing all of those defects and getting the works orders done, and the guys have got now the capability of signing off works while they're out there on the road, instead of having to come back and download it and go through the whole lot. So challenges continue with the COVID stuff that we were still stuck with 1 person, 1 vehicle for a lot of the quarter. So that's highlighted probably in the budget about plan overruns, but we're now back to working with the guys a couple of guys in the vehicle, so that's good news. And the recommendation is on page 85. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Are there any questions of Mr Spokes for the last time? Councillor Quaritch.
Give him our time.
I just have one, Don. The dial before you dig inquiries, is that because people were locked down during lockdown and decided to dig a lot of holes, or why is that?
No, look, I think through you, Madam Chair, predominantly it had a lot to do with the solar farms and all of the new buildings that are going on around the town and construction. So lots of people are looking for dial before you dig and information about where council assets are. So it kind of sits with all of the applications that we're getting for planning. Everything has to have a dial before you dig.
Is there any other questions? Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Davis. Would you like to speak, Councillor O'Brien? Would you like to speak, Councillor?
So, Don, thank you very much.
Yeah, Peter. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Don, I need to say thank you very much for your service to the council, what you've done and the role you took over. And the way you've done it, and I just look at your last report and things have certainly changed since the first report. When we look at the overdues and what's happening and being able to sign jobs off on the site, it's just a revolving change in the way council's going. And I wish you well in your future endeavours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak, Councillor?
Yes, I'd just like to. Sorry, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Davis said. The parks and the gardens and the roads around Benalla look better than what they've ever looked. And, I think we all should be very proud of what you people have done. And thank you very much for your many, many years of service, Don.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank you very much for your service. It's been great to get to know you. All those in favour? That's passed. Thank you, and close the meeting at 8:06. Thank God.